Hi everyone, my name is Jack Wu. Thank you for coming today for Robotic Aerial Security panel. Oh, hey, I got a friend down there. We are a robotic aerial security company. And before I introduce our panel of industry leaders and end users, I'll just kind of describe what it is briefly. It's an autonomous drone security system that consists of software, base station, and the drone itself to provide 24-hour surveillance. And they work autonomously. They talk to each other through what we call R2D2D, relay to drone. So the entire system is designed to operate like autonomous robots. So for the panel we have today, Denis from SIA, Security Industry Association, that represents the physical security industry. And we have James from End2End, which is it's a security consultancy. I don't know if I can describe you correctly, but you do security consultants for very high net worth individuals as well as large corporations. And we have Stephen from East Bay Fire, just right here locally. And we have Mike Buckle from SunPower. It's a large solar farm and solar manufacturing company. And we also have Rick from Dow AgroScience. Okay, so we're gonna get started. I'm gonna ask you guys some questions. Oops, All right, so to start, what are the major shortcomings in physical security offerings? In other words, what keeps the CSOs, Chief Security Officers, up at night? I'm gonna send this question to James and Denis.
Well, I would say that in today's world, CSOs are more concerned about business continuity than anything else. They have to ensure that they protect their brand. They have to ensure that their businesses continue to run, and that entails understanding exactly what threats are being exercised against their business. So it's very critical for them to be able to assess those threats in some way, shape, or form. One of the advantages that robotics can bring to that equation is the whole situational awareness and assessment that can be made on different incidents that are happening, and therefore being able to take appropriate action against that. Therefore, again, CSOs have concerns. Their job is risk mitigation, and so that's really what concerns them the most.
So I agree with all that, and so I would add that CSOs now are being a little more integrated into the business. I mean, they have to worry about if they have a C in front of their name, they're tasked with understanding the business. So business intelligence is going to become a big part of this. While I think we're going to be able to do a lot with robotics, and there's a lot of talk around robotics and artificial intelligence and the like around security, I think what's going to be different about these types of technologies is that they integrate with other stakeholders, that they can be integrated to do a lot of other functions that people aren't normally thinking about, and that their use cases will be expanded in such a fashion that it's going to be more akin to gathering business intelligence and figuring out what part of that domain is yours, right? So I think security gets brought in from a data perspective, and that intelligence will be siphoned out at some point. So I think even when we're talking about access control and security and response, we're talking about access enablement versus controls now at the C-suite level. The second part of it is that response is going to be key, and the huge sort of black hole in security is that we have a lot of detection devices, but we don't have a lot of response mechanisms. So I think drones are going to change the game in that you have a cost-effective way to do a response. And those are, I think, some of the key differentiators.
Great, thank you for that, James. Now for my next question, What's your opinion on how RAS, robotic aerial security, could impact corporate physical security? And all of you can answer this question. So we can actually start with Rick down there. So we start on this side.
Thanks, Jack. We are in a secured campus environment. So our biggest issue is getting somebody immediately to a trigger from one of our systems without going into too deep of what those triggers might be. It comes from multiple systems which can integrate through the software that Jack mentioned. What that does is gets us immediate eyes over the situation to identify the threat, or if it is even a threat. And when we saw the value in that, we started looking at other benefits of having that. We have guards that have to respond to these triggers, and we would like to provide as much safety as to that guard as possible, because they're kind of going into the unknown. With the mobile video surveillance, we can identify it before the guard even gets there. And if it does look like an obvious threat, then we can hold them off, call in people more prepared to deal with that kind of emergency.
So generally, like situational awareness,
Yes.
in terms of being able to know before you guys respond.
So that was the first thing that got us looking at it, was the immediate response to a trigger. With a 500-acre campus fenced in, we can't. If somebody does breach the fence or a gate, it's difficult unless we have 10 times as many cameras, as opposed to programming the software to automatically reply to that trigger and get the eyes above the situation immediately. And the dispatcher can then monitor the guard's safety as he or she is responding to the emergency.
So cameras where you need it.
Cameras everywhere.
Okay.
Well, my little information is a little different than his. I have 1,000+ acres of fence line and literally one guard for a solar field. So what we're looking at a RAS system is to help augment our security force. Right now, we have a force of a few officers per shift at nighttime, but they cannot effectively monitor the whole solution on foot or on cameras. So we're actually looking at the RAS system to help supplement security, not replace security, but actually supplement security. So if we're in a solar field of 1,000 acres and we get a issue across the campus, we actually respond with a drone much effectively and efficiently, and then an officer on foot. So we actually think this is actually a good system to help supplement our physical security force, not just actually replace it. So like when you're talking about how it's gives situational awareness, I think it actually double ours on campus itself, in a very cost-effective way too.
I would say at Regional Parks, Police and Fire, we have about 122,000 square acres that we have to make sure are safe and are monitored. And what RAS really brings to the table for us is the idea of intelligence, the idea that we have a monitoring system that can understand where is a trail, or where is this place, or where is this one thing going. Do we have someone that we need to look for, or something we need to see that's not in the normal area of operations, so that we can have a situation where, let's say someone's lost in one of our parks, these drones can be changed, or they can be programmed so that they know, okay, these are all the most normal trails for people to be on. So we can have a drone go out there, and while we have our people getting prepared to get to a location, these drones are already searching areas of most likely appearance, or they can go to see areas and give the kind of heads up that we need to be able to get to those places first. And then on top of that, the intelligence to do hourly or daily monitoring of hotspots or other issues for fire that we may run into. And to give that kind of information in real time is going to really change the ability for us to keep our citizens safe when they're out to these parks.
So, given the fact that you guys have to manage the park, I assume that people do get lost. Are there scenarios, like how do you guys handle search and rescue right now if someone gets lost?
So we use it with just pure hard manpower. What we do is if someone gets lost in a large park, I mean, you could talk, one park could be 2,000 square acres. that's a lot of people. We muster maybe 200-300 people in these large-scale incidents, and those are people that you have to feed. Those are people that you have to watch out for. These are people that you have to make sure they're not getting injured or hurt or other things that could cause liability. And you need to try and get them out there as quickly as possible, and you need them to communicate. With RAS, you can have these types of drones out there in an emergency like that, doing this work quickly, efficiently, using different types of spectrum analysis so that we could see maybe heat, or we could see changes, things like that. That could really help us in the future.
Great.
Yeah, so
Anything?
we're doing some work for some high net worth individuals and planning some very basic tactical responses. And what you find is that in very close quarters versus really open areas, that time frame is very small, the window of opportunity to be able to intervene. So like any tactical operation, having intelligence and have that situational awareness is really key to success. And I was just talking before, together about an incident that just recently happened where somebody was attacked and the officer intervened, but he was injured. He was able to shoot the assailant, but they're both in the hospital now. So the fact that you can get to a situation, understand what's going on, and decide whether you're going to intervene, and then be in front of that person so that they come to you versus you having to meet them on their own grounds is actually very appealing to people that do this, day in and day out. And this actually translates over into law enforcement and working with San Francisco on the same type of tactical response, is that if you can get eyes on that or intelligence on that situation and gain that situational awareness, then you can tactically plan, and your risk profile goes down by a factor of 1,000.
So using drone as a first responder will give you a tactical advantage as well as protecting the human assets.
Absolutely.
Right, to give you the reaction time necessary to formulate a response. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're going to be not only are you going to be more effective, which is what you're trying to get as a result, but you're also going to be safer. So from a personnel standpoint, safety is important. You don't want your people to be hurt. And if you can imagine, not just the physical threat of somebody coming, but if you have a chemical, biological, or other type of an incident where you're walking into a situation where you don't know what that is, drones are going to be able to have testing capabilities, situational awareness using eyes, ears, and and microphones. So these platforms will be instrumental in reducing risk dramatically.
Speaking of people getting hurt, so Michael, you mentioned a story back when we were at the Ready Room about the location in Southern California. Do you want to share that story as well?
Yeah, I'll pick my words very closely since my boss is here. We actually had an incident that happened recently, about last quarter. A security officer was patrolling one of our sites, and he was walking with a K9 unit late at night, and the K9 unit responded to a noise on the fence line. So this is out in the solar field around midnight, and this officer with his K9 unit is responding to an incident on the fence line. Literally, somebody jumped the fence with a knife and attacked the security officer with the K9 unit. And this security officer was not a small guy by any stretch of his imagination, but this person, whatever his head, decided to strike the security officer with this K9 unit. So that made a really business case for us to why we need a drone or RAS system. Because if we actually had a great fence line detection and our RAS noticed that somebody was jumping the fence, we send a drone there first to investigate that. Then if we need to, then we send a security officer with the K9 unit with backup. Right now, what happened is the K9 unit was reacted to something, and the security officer went there. And if he actually had better situational awareness with a drone, then he would be able to respond correctly with a better plan ahead.
So how much is an armed guard for you guys?
Well, different sites, different costs,
Out
of
of
course.
curiosity.
A security officer company charges between $20 to $40 an hour, depends on their skill set. That's the baseline.
And how much does that translate into like a monthly basis? So we can
At
process
bigger
that number?
sites, it could at least easily cost a few $1 million for operations of the guards. This is a bigger site, of course. So if we actually have 24/7 security with 4 or 5 officers per shift, that's easy of $1.5 million operation costs, just officers. And the biggest thing about that is when I do site assessments, I go there early morning during grave shift. Every single time I go there early morning, the security officer grave shift is extremely awake. So I'm afraid that person's getting some sleep in.
Got it, got it. So since we're on the subject of money, I'm going to talk to Denis here real quick. So Denis, you've been in this physical security industry for about how many
30
decades?
years.
30 years? So in terms of the functionalities and the use cases that drones, security drones or robotic aerial security provides, what type of disruption do you think, or what type of impact? Because we just mentioned how much a guard would cost, right? So if today we're sort of going down this line of thought, what type of impact would this have on the guard placement?
Look, I
industry?
mean, the guard services has been a growing industry and continues to be for a number of different factors, not the least of which is the capabilities of police response have gone down quite a bit over the years. And so organizations, as they grow substantially and et cetera, use guard services as a methodology of monitoring their organization and assessing incidents and responding to those incidents and et cetera. I think that, I don't think that's going to necessarily go away, but instead of a growth in that domain, I believe that there would be a growth in RAS as a supplement and a complement to guard services. and
Like a
being
force
able to-
multiplier, perhaps?
Force multiplier is one way of putting it, basically using that to be more efficient in how guard services are applied. So no useless calls for different things, risk assessments and understanding whether guard services are adequate for a particular risk that comes up. And so I see many of the companies that are the main providers, there's 3 big ones and many little ones, that provide those kinds of services to companies are likely to use a robot as a service kind of approach or drone-based approach to adding and the efficiency and adding to the value of the services that they provide to end users. So as an impact on the industry, I think that there will be a growth in that kind of subscription aspect of what is given to guard services, and that'll reduce the increase for guard services, but it won't necessarily eliminate it, because at some point in time there has to be some human interaction with whatever incident is taking place.
Okay. So we've talked about how drones can actually help secure the location and perhaps help find the lost person. What about the data that they collect? So the ability for these drones to actually now monitor some of the industrial operations. For example, at Dell Agriscience, you mentioned you guys have a 500-acre campus. What type of activities that you guys currently do on that campus that you can see that perhaps these drones can help out?
We've looked into flying regular tours to learn what the normal is, using that data, and could be, infrared heat detection possibly of the buildings, movement that appears to be people walking when
Anomalies?
Yes, or in the occupied areas, we do have a wooded area, so it could be a deer, something like that. But they pretty much stay contained to the wooded areas. But the drone can learn that, and then if it does see movement in areas that are normally not occupied by the deer, then especially after hours, it can, instead of trying to send somebody out there to look at it and taking all this time, they can easily identify it within dispatch and disregard it. It just brings a lot of information on, if there might be an unusual heat source, or unusual movement after the drone does its tours and after time learns what is normal. it can trigger an off-normal event that we can quickly look at it and assess it.
So essentially, once the drone learns what's normal, the drone can find the anomaly.
Yes.
Since we're on the subject of animals, I want to bring the question back to Michael. So, Michael, you told me that on your solar farm, you guys use sheep to graze.
Yeah, we're looking actually.
So drones can collect a lot of different types of data, right? Do you guys currently use drones to do any solar inspections?
Well, we're looking at the drones for many reasons. My hat of security is for security and make sure the place is safe. But the operations side actually wants to integrate with the drones because we actually have solar fields, solar panels that rotate. If the solar panels are rotating efficiently, the drone can respond to that. Also, talking to Nightingale, the monitor of how dirty the panels are. You might not think about it, but dust is a big factor for us. So right now, we actually pay an engineer to walk the site $50 an hour to make sure the panels are not dirty. If we get a drone, much cheaper solution, but effective solution to monitor the panels itself, it will actually save a lot of money on the engineer side. The engineer can do something else more effectively with his time, his or her time. So we're actually looking at the drones for security side, also looking at the drones for a cost-effective solution for our facility operations side to monitor the panels itself, to monitor the sheep actually, because the sheep should only be in certain areas, and the sheep break through the gate, it could cause a lot of damage. So we're actually looking for the operations side and the security side with drones.
I'll actually speak a little bit on what he said, which is I think the ability to use these tools so that our professionals can do what they're best at. We have a saying where I work, which is it needs to be simple enough for a firefighter to be able to use it. You have to realize that when things are, we have to realize is that when things are going on, when you have large scale events, or we have large emergencies, or we have things that are happening, the ability for an intelligent drone to be able to handle what it's doing, to go to a certain place, you just tap on the map and hey, there it goes, or it's pulling that data back for us to be analyzing in real time. That's a huge differentiator, and that's giving you manpower back, and that's giving you focus back, which is two things that these drones can really do with the intelligence of what Nightingale has shown us, is that when you're out dealing with a situation, you just need that video and that awareness. You don't necessarily want to worry about, okay, how's the drone doing in the air? Where's the drone going? What's its battery life? That kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about that when it's a service.
Okay, since we are an industry, so I want to bring the subject back to money. In terms of labor replacement value, in terms of money that you can save, what are the areas that you think a system like this can help you save money? Just examples of how it can help you save money.
Well, I was recently speaking at a conference in India, and you'd think that would be a place where you would have minimal reception to labor-saving devices. However, we had a really good response from most of the people in the audience, and it was about 80 of the security directors for big companies in Bangalore and throughout India. And the reason is because the drones are going to offer multitasking. So one of the vice presidents from Reliant Corporation, which is they have multiple interests, gas and oil, and they have other types of plants. And one of the things that he found was that when you try to train technical people to be security people, it didn't translate very well. But when you train security people to do technical work, that actually crossed over. So being able to cross-train people in different functions and be able to give them intelligence so that they can, in their, like your guys' cases, monitor very large areas or be tactically responsive in very small areas is really going to be a game changer. So it's not just, I don't think it'll be the next phase of what we do will be about efficiency. So the whole IoT movement is being fueled, by 2020 it's going to be 20 trillion. It's all fueled by dollars that come out of efficiency. So I believe that people will be retasked, and I see it actually as us getting more effective and using our manpower more effectively, and it may actually increase the amount of manpower that you use than what you used before.
So what you're seeing is it's not necessarily labor replacement, but what you're seeing is also labor enhancement, perhaps working using RAS to do their jobs better.
Right, because I think that the real gold is that people are really inefficient because they have bad intelligence.
Got it.
So I think that you can justify that when you're efficient and you're effective. So I think RAS is going to offer that efficiency and effectiveness so that it justifies the cost.
Yeah, plus I think a lot of guards are just paid to sleep. I mean, you know, they're not paid.
Currently, yes.
So, Rick, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to add to exactly what he's mentioned about improving efficiencies and also safety. We aren't looking at it as a employee reduction, but allowing the guards to more effectively do their jobs. There's so many more inspections and monitoring of the, say, fire extinguishers, emergency stations and stuff like that inside the buildings. By using the drone to do the visual tour with the dispatcher and the command center watching, it will free up that guard to be in the buildings doing other duties to make them more efficient. And so that was a great point about it's really going to add to efficiencies and repurposing staff to doing other new duties that come upon us daily, new requirements.
So
and-
do
and
more
so
with
on.
the same resources.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Well, I think that one of the other aspects is, if you think of the campus that you're dealing with from a, 500 acres or 25 square miles or whatever, one of the issues is as incidents increase, because they do for some reason, the only solution today that you have is to add more manpower. So you end up having to hire like crazy, either guard services or otherwise, and eventually a situation where in a 500-acre facility, you're going to have people at very close proximity to each other, spread around to be able to address those incidents. What RAS can bring is not necessarily a reduction in labor, but certainly a reduction in future costs that you're going to have to incur.
Do you
So
feel
that'll be important savings in itself.
Do you guys feel that perhaps, if the dumb job in terms of the repetitiveness of patrols are replaced by robots like this, the human guards will now be able to focus on doing something else, and perhaps they could be more skilled, right, and more reliable. Do you guys get a feeling that's the trend, or am I wrong?
That's reality. The reality is that all this technology, I was just talking to you guys earlier also about technology where video is going to be translated into situational awareness, where you'll have captioning underneath. The video will be telling you what's going on in English or whatever language you want. So if you can think, this stuff's pretty much already here. So if you can get that level of intelligence and you can have it be mobile and it can be pushing back to you, at that point you don't really have to have the operator watching that particular event. They can be scanning live video of all events, and then only the things that you determine that need to be addressed by that operator, and they can be spoken to in their language, and then they can go out and decide whether or not they want to intervene or not. So that type of sort of serving up that incident in a real understandable way becomes the nirvana state, if you will, for all security operations, but not just security, really just about anything you want from a universal operations center. And we've been piloting sort of a UOC philosophy that you should have all of those responses, right? So it can be the mechanical, physical, security, all those things can be sized depending on the size of your facility, right?
Okay.
So you may have one that just does it all, but this technology is going to offer the mobility and the intelligence to be able to make it worthwhile.
Okay. So we talked about the impact of RAS on human labor for you guys. What about the impact compared to other devices like the PTZ cameras, like the point-tilt zoom cameras? For a perimeter, like SunPower, for example, you guys have a 1,000 acre? Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
how do you guys secure that now?
well, I don't want to talk to, once again, my bosses here. Doing some information out. But securing 1,000 acres with PTZ and cameras and fence line detection, you're literally talking about a few $1 million in investment cost. So right now what we have on site is not as robust as we would like it to be. So once again, we're actually looking for a cost-effective solution. There's three options. A, throw bodies at the problem, which is not going to happen because recruitment, training officers, staffing officers is a high, expensive cost, a yearly cost. Another solution is actually building infrastructure of offensive detection and camera systems, which I don't mind. Unfortunately, my bosses do. The return on investment is not as effective as the third solution, which is the drone technologies. Right now, if the powers that be says install a camera across the campus, I look at the problem. I know off the top of my head how much it costs because I work with James, and James loves me and says, "Okay, it costs you this much money. Give me the PO." Guess what? Bosses always say no because the cost is too high. But if I need a cost-effective solution that's mobile, that can be deployed, and that's one of the best parts of Nightingale and drones in general. If I called up and says I need a drone to monitor this out-of-the-way area that's not covered with offensive detection, it could be deployed within literally hours, not days. Right now, if I had to monitor a fence literally 1,000 acres away from my headquarters, it would take months to get the PO to James and get some money approved and trench the work and install the cameras and commission the cameras. It would take months. Or just call Nightingale and within hours I get a better solution, much cheaper.
He has some unique problems too, which are that it's environmentally controlled. So you can't just walk
What does
out
that
into
mean?
there.
So if you can tell the audience, what does that mean?
Well,
Environmental control.
you have to learn about every type of species of ground owl and every ground animal. They have to go through a class. There's rattlesnakes out there. You can only move, I think it's 5 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
response time, if you need to get to the other side, you can't go over 5 miles an hour on the facility, right? Because you can
you
damage.
can drive maximum 5 miles.
Maximum 5 miles an hour, right? So there's a lot of prohibitive things in a lot of these different companies where you can't get to where you need to go, or you need special training, or you're going to damage the environment, and these are sort of things that are constantly happening, to companies.
Got it. But if you have a turtle, I think 5 miles per hour would be plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, turtle.
A drone turtle.
So everyone here, I think, if you walk the floor, or if you've been into drones, I'm sure everyone agrees that we're in the early stage of the technology. It's just hard to get things work reliably a lot of times. But I want to put that aside right now. If in the next 5 to 10 years, blue sky, if you can have a robotic aerial security system do anything, can you talk about what that would look like? We can start with Rick.
Well, with technology these days, 10 years, I can't imagine what it's going to look like in 10 years.
It's true.
So I don't think I'm grasping at straws, but if a drone could enter a building big enough to support it, to especially manufacturing facilities, and as with all technology, improve technology with battery life versus recharge time, keep it up, longer with less recharge time. That'll keep it up in the air longer. I totally see that in our foreseeable future within 10
Yeah,
years.
so better battery technology. I'm sure everyone here
Right.
agrees. Yeah.
So those would be the, it's awesome coverage outdoors. I would like to have that indoors as well.
Okay. Interesting.
well, my technology actually less than 5 years if it could, is if the technology of facial recognition is better, so the drone can recognize, oh, that's Jay, ignore him. That's Stan, ignore him. And that's Jane, ignore her. But the drone recognizes people from distance and can identify the person and then investigate. That will be the best solution for me. Of course, that's a magic wish of the drone. Magically knows, okay, recognize a person by the face or by how they walk or how they drive. Ignore the person. But the person that you don't recognize, then investigate it. I don't expect the drone to apprehend the person, of course, but it's just to, hey, security, go check this area out. This person I recognize, I'm gonna monitor from here. You go investigate that. That'd be my blue skies magic wand.
So out of all the things that you could wish for, facial recognition.
Facial, well, of course.
Okay. Well, that's actually quite doable. I think it has to do with the camera, but that's a whole separate topic.
I would say overall intelligence, and I would say device-to-device intelligence, the drones that would be able to work together. I think in a lot of situations, we need to be able to determine what is normal over a large environment with the least amount possible of people or security guards or in our case law enforcement, so that we can get ahead of a problem before it even starts, or an issue that ever starts. To be able to say, okay, we're normally at 4:30, we see maybe 5 or 6 people. Why do we have 12 right now? Why do we have 15? Or why do we have these people that we don't recognize anymore? Let's get more intelligent with what we can do, and with multiple drones or multiple security systems, how can we move forward to a place where we can actually get those security systems in place to say, okay, well, let's get some visibility out there first. Let's get it there, and maybe let's lower the incidents that we even run into.
James?
I'm going to go with mind control.
Okay, that sounds good. That's a bigger wish. Santa likes that.
Yeah, I think all of these things are going to be possible. I mean, I'm seeing it from the students right now. The grad students. That a lot software aside, which I think you're going to almost be able to do anything you want in that and the advancements. I would have to go. What I like to see is the cost come down, so to make them even more affordable. So I know that's something that is going to be, it will allow everybody to deploy them, and it'll lower that bar for everyone. So
Cheaper, better, faster.
Better, faster, cheaper, in better, working better in all the different environments, right? But I think it's going to be sky's the limit,
Denis, do you have anything?
First of all, great comments that were already given, so it's hard to expand upon that, although I agree with the fact that this is really, it's going to be more intelligence at the software level. It's going to be true autonomy, that they are capable of doing what has to be done. They're capable of communicating with each other, and therefore sharing information so that they can tag team on assessments, and I think analytics is going to be very key to how drone technology will become that much more capable of providing assessment information.
Got it, and gather the data. So once we gather the data, there's analysis, and that perhaps the analysis, the video. So some of the things that you guys are talking about, or you guys just wish for, I would say that half of them is probably doable in the very, very near future. Mind control is going to be a little difficult, but I think, but never say never, right? Okay, so. Do you guys have anything else you want to address? Anything specific that you think robotic aerial security that I missed? Any use cases that you want to mention?
Actually,
before I open it up.
One thought was shortcomings of the drones. The biggest problem I have with the RAS systems isn't technology. I've seen it; it works great. One of the shortcomings is that it's so new that it's hard to get internal stakeholders involved and to sign off. We're going through a lot of issues of, people just, it's new technology, it's a new field of advancement security, so you have to get everybody involved and sign off on it. Legal has to be involved, the local operations people have to be involved, everybody wants to make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed. So that's actually the biggest hurdle we actually was experiencing. It's not the cost factor is the hurdle. It's not the technology not working, but actually internal discussion of actually getting it approved internally by the stakeholders.
Rick?
I just wanted to say we've only touched on a lot of the options with the Nightingale drone system, the RAS. There's so many things that we haven't touched on, such as it lands in its docking without any human intervention. It monitors the weather to make sure before it even deploys that the weather conditions are proper for flight. If the weather does change, and it is out doing a route, it will be called back to its nest and land itself. And if there's two in flight at the same time, they can talk together, or if one's coming back due to a battery too low, which it monitors itself, the other one will know, hey, I need to go pick up at this spot where the other one left off. There's just so many features that I think that we just didn't have time to get to all of them today.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I think the first phase of drone development, it's all about data gathering, the ability to build a good platform and have the sensors to be able to gather that data. But what you guys are really saying is autonomy, in terms of having an intelligence system that's able to coordinate with each other and be able to do the tasks all by themselves and take care of themselves, charge themselves. You're saying that is the system that can be, that's what you see as far as something that you would use in the future. Right?
And I'd say one other thing is that you can't be lost on what you were talking about as far as program development, is that we need to do some work on developing policies, procedures, good contracts, so that understand what your liability is, right? Insurance, all those types of things. Those are sort of still new ground. I have a group called Lightship Group where we've been working on that. We've been talking about sort of getting these contractual language out there to the general public so these initiatives can move forward more quickly and give people use cases so they don't have to go investigate that. Because a lot of times internally, as you were talking, that is the biggest hurdle. Even though you make the use case, you can't get it through because you got all these other stakeholders who need to sign off. So
yeah, and it's so new. It's just
right.
So new, right? And people like familiarity. So we're introducing new technology, even though it's got new capabilities, but it's an unknown.
Right.
But that's only a matter of time. The first mainframe computer, I'm sure when IBM was trying to sell it, I'm sure they ran into similar problems.
I think from my industry, 2009 we started putting body cameras on officers, and at first there was a huge outcry as to the public's right to privacy, why the officers have body cameras on them. And I think now it's a question of why don't the officers have body cameras on them. Technology moves quickly and acceptance moves quickly, and you go from what is this to why don't we have it very quickly. And having a platform that updates and moves quickly is another positive with the RAS, in that you're getting updates all the time, and your platform is building and getting better.
So 24/7 operations in a way. Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, to second that, because I think there are two elements that we cannot neglect. One is the regulatory environment. I mean, we can talk about autonomy, we can talk about all kinds of things, but, line of sight is not going to help us very much with that. And then the second thing is one that you just mentioned, which is privacy. Big issue. It's a big issue in the security industry in general, and it will become a big industry in anything that involves drones and robotics. I mean, clearly, that is not something that we can neglect. It's a policy issue. It's a personal concern issue. It will have impacts when we think of applications such as university campuses and things like that, where, in my past experience, we had worked on different scenarios in university campuses, and privacy was always this big explosion of concern by everybody. So it's something that's going to have to be worked at and overcome.
Okay, great. All right, I want to open it up to folks here. If you have any questions, does anyone have any questions?
Okay, I was just wondering, since we mentioned the K9 units earlier, and we talked about drones potentially or may not replace human security guard, but I was wondering what capacity could it replace K9 units, maybe as attack dogs or just to dissuade, beware of drones, instead of beware of dogs, in that effect?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for myself I'll keep it simple. I think the RES system would help supplement security that replaces attack dogs. It will help the person be aware of what's going on. If the person wasn't sure, the officer wasn't sure what's going on, they can send a drone and monitor the situation, versus like say one officer will contact the police. I'm not thinking ahead enough for a K9 unit to be replaced, but help supplement what's going on. Because if somebody jumps in the fence with a knife, I don't want a security officer to respond at all. Just call PD and have them respond instead.
From a PD point of view, we have canines as well, and I think canines are good for really two good things. The first one is broad spectrum analysis. Canines' noses and eyes can pick up a lot more than a human can, so drones are very helpful in that regard. In fact, they can really be even more helpful there. And I think the second thing is that a canine also gives an officer a secondary form of security, something watching the officer's back or letting other people in the vicinity know that this officer is protected and has a better ability to be protected. And I think the drones can absolutely do that as well. I wouldn't say replacement, but I would say a lot of enhancement there.
I mean, you know, I think for most people, security is one of those things when it's done right, you don't know. You absolutely don't feel it. You just do what you got to do. You go about your business. So it's you know, in a way, it's kind of if something goes wrong, that's the only time that you get the attention. So Amazon recently filed a patent called the Drone Buddy. It's a police drone that rests on the police shoulder. And this is a patent. This is a real patent filed by Amazon. This is how serious they are now. It will take off. When before the police approach the vehicle, it will actually circle the entire vehicle, look inside to provide the video to the police, and then the police will walk up to the car while the drone is documenting everything. You know, this type of security and surveillance, I think, when, you know, like, you know, Denis mentioned, so there's going to be some public discussions around the policy and laws that goes to govern it, right? We here, we're doing commercial stuff, but no doubt, I think at some point, privacy, as we fly over industrial and commercial facilities, the employees, actually this would be a question for you guys. How would you guys deal with privacy issues with your employees?
I believe it needs to be set up by policy at the top. I think if you include the employees with what is being implemented and why and how it's going to improve their safety, even if they're leaving after hours, and call and say, hey, can you watch over me when I go to the parking lot? Present the positives to them and reassure them that, you know, it's not being put in place to be Big Brother, but to protect, enhance their security while they're on the campus. And like I said, include them before implementation. I found that tends to let people be a lot more comfortable with it than if you just let them all of a sudden see one flying in the air and they don't know about it.
So transparency.
I think also technology, because you're presuming that you're using a camera that is actually, you know, looking at the actual space instead of maybe using something where you're using infrared. So you don't necessarily have PII in that standpoint.
What's a PII?
Person identifiable information. If you're using like a FLIR type camera and that type, so you can switch between modes. You're probably going to have multiple cameras, and you also have privacy mechanisms built into it. So you have facial detection where you can say, if I see a face, those pixels are automatically deleted. So there's lots of things that can be done on the privacy side.
And that's available today?
Correct. Okay. Yeah, you can get that standard from like a Samsung camera. So all those things I think will be available, you know, to address privacy issues, you know, to the general public. But I think it's going to be more of an education, more assimilation to the technology, that to kind of quell people. And we've talked about this before with Wi-Fi. You know, everybody said when I was at Symantec, we're never doing Wi-Fi because it's insecure. Now everybody sets it up at their house. So, you know, I think that's where we're going to go.
As the technology proliferates, I think there'll be more understanding both from the employees and also, you know, I think the FAA and you know, as they start to investigate and learn about you know, autonomous drones for commercial applications. I'm hoping that this is my personal wish. This is my wish, is that the FAA will be able to be more understanding with some of the, you know, use cases. So. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, I'm from Nokia Bell Laboratory.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I'm from Nokia Bell Lab.
Okay.
In New Jersey. So my question is, are you thinking about learning possibilities by the drone so that at least on the surveillance, you can actually, the drone can learn from the repetitive behaviors, then it can actually protect it much before something can happen. So basically anomalies, you can in English say anomaly. Are you thinking about that kind of features into the drone?
Well, I think machine learning requires us to be able to gather the data first. Having the data is like having a bunch of books. You still need the student, right now we have the student, we have the drone, but we don't have the data. So it's kind of like we have a smart kid with no school to go to. At least it's not a chicken or the egg. At least we know you got to be able to gather the data first. That's definitely something I think will happen. I just think right now with robotics, the state of robotics where it's at, to get an operational system, a fully functional system that's reliable by itself, that's what we're shooting for. And some of the intelligence that we're already built into it, I believe it's only going to get enhanced over time. The level of enhancement will really based on how safe and how reliable we can make the solution. The key is safety. Got to make it safe, because the one thing we can't change is gravity. So we got to make sure we guard against malfunctions. We have to make sure the software works properly. But I think machine learning is a much, using drone as a platform and to take that data to do predictive analysis. I think that is definitely the direction. If we don't do it, somebody else will. But it's definitely the direction. Yeah. Anybody else? Any question? Okay, great. Oh, wait, one more.
Steve Bailey. I've heard most of the talk about with security passive roles. Do you see anything in the future for more active roles from those drones, or just passive security applications? Thank you, guys.
I'll take that one first. I think if you're looking a little farther out, I would love to see the idea of a drone that goes out with a first responder, or goes out with someone who gets there first, so that a person is responding, but the drone gets out there first and can actually interact first. The first thing that someone will do is actively ask to identify who you are and what you're doing, and to have the drone be able to do that first, you're taking possibly a life or death situation off the table. Hey, who are you? Can I get your license and registration? And a real quick scan to see if you're acting funny, if there's any chemical compounds that could say that you're under the influence, or do you have any weapons on you? That is absolutely an active part of this that we can get to, I believe.
Yeah, and we were talking to somebody who was in Ramadi, and a lot of the military people would know that there's patterns, right, that happen when things, events, right, when security risk or you're going to have an attack. And this is true of, even in urban areas. And I was talking to Chief of Police in Bangalore, and he was talking about using the drones for that very purpose, was to be able to do some proactive analysis of people gathering and gaining intelligence around movement. And if you're mapping an area, statically every day, you start to get that sense of normality. Then you can start to do a little bit of predictive behavior when you start to see massings of people and such. So I think this is going to be a native type of an application, right, where it's going to be, once you start using drones on a daily basis, that it will actually turn into a proactive, more predictive model, right, based on the data. So yes, absolutely. I think that's actually the nirvana state, because reaction is always going to be the state you don't want to be in, right? Prevention will be where everybody's looking to go.
Yeah, like active defense.
Correct, yeah.
Prevention and prediction.
Yes, yes.
Great. Any other questions, or any of the panelists wants to touch on that subject, or? Okay, great. All right. Any more questions? Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for coming. I understand that security isn't necessarily, thank you. I understand that security isn't necessarily the juiciest of subjects, because again, it is one of those things that when it works, no one cares. It just works. And that's why we love it. The reason why we love it is because it has the highest demand in terms of technical challenge. It needs to be available 24/7. It needs to be stored outside, exposed to the elements. It needs to be able to perform its job completely autonomously in areas that might be remote or to save a human life. So it's not necessarily the type of drone technology where you survey or you map that necessarily can directly translate into an ROI from an operational standpoint. But what it does is it will provide the type of security at the cost that the end users will be able to afford. So I'm very excited about bringing the system to life, and thank you again for coming to listen. I appreciate it. And thank you to all the panelists.